Hi guys, I finally finished my DIY cockpit. I started building this cockpit before I even bought the base, and to be honest, I didn't know how much the game would be worth the candle in the end. However, I'm gonna say right away that I was quite surprised at how right I was in making the decision to build a cockpit. Yep, cockpit right away, this is the best possible solution. First I wanted to say, in case you have a direct drive base, but actually in any case. First of all, the angle of your seat is very important, and the angle of the pedals as well. But let's talk about everything in order. Initially, I wanted to save up for a cockpit of this type. Aluminium or steel profile cockpits are the most durable and functional, and many sim racing fans prefer these options. I think it's the best solution if you wanna buy a cockpit. But the price for such cockpits starts from $500. And that's what I thought. I would need to save for such a cockpit for several months and then wait about another month for delivery. And I was already about to buy a direct drive base at that moment, so I started to study options with a DIY, aka do-it-yourself cockpit. I watched bloggers, analyzed all the advantages of a DIY cockpit and realized that for a smaller budget than the original MOZA steering wheel, I can build a cockpit that is no way inferior to the factory versions right away. I started developing my project. As a reference, I took 5 DIY cockpits that I liked. Most of all, I like the idea of this one, which combines simplicity of the form and at the same time reliability. Budget. Initially, the materials cost me less than $20. 3 wooden planks with these diameters for $5.50 each and 1 plank with these diameters for $3. Couple days later, I bought another plank for $5.50. As a result, my materials budget was exactly $25. In addition, I ordered a racing seat for a good price, $155. I also have self-tapping screws from my previous project and some of the necessary tools. The other ones I borrowed. And the very next day I started building the frame. In front of me were 5 different references with 5 different sizes. The key factor for me was the measurements that I took in my real car. I tried to completely replicate the position and angle of the seat of my real car. I really love building something out of wood, because wood is like plasticine, it's easy to create a structure of any shape from it. The only problem is, I don't have my own workshop. Therefore, when carrying out such work directly in your apartment, you need to be extra careful and clean up your mess right away. Otherwise, later you will have sawdust all over your place. After the first couple of hours, I already had the main frame made, and I attached the central crossbar using only 2 screws in order to select the angle I needed later, when I built the base. A couple of days later, I bought the seat and started working on the seating section. I also bought bolts and nuts and began to measure the holes for attaching the seat. At that moment, the position of the seat seemed close to ideal, but I will say ahead of the time that I changed the position of the seat in relation to the central crossbar and the angle of inclination several times. This is the main plus of DIY wooden cockpit. You can change and redo as many times as you need during the process. The next step was to buy pedals and build a pedal section. I started by shortening the length on the pedal section by 15 cm. When I already had both seat and the pedals, it was easy to understand that I had too much length in the front. Therefore, the final length on my cockpit was reduced from 140 cm to 125. When I made the pedal section, the main idea was to straighten all the joints as much as possible. Below I placed 3 fragments under each of the pedals, so that I could conveniently fix the pedals in any position or attach additional structures to change the angle of the pedals. All these reinforcements served the same purpose, to make the entire front cockpit block as strong as possible. I understood that R12 base would create serious vibrations, so I continued to straighten the front part of my cockpit on all sides. The next day I bought longer bolts for the first seat angle change and good reinforced washers. After a couple of days, the R12 MOZA base and adapter for steering wheel finally arrived. The base looks quite stylish, although I like the look of R16 base more. To be honest, I expected this base to be heavier. I bought the steering wheel earlier. This is not an expensive steering wheel, but it is made in rally style. Without the base adapter, it weighs about 800 grams. This is a very light steering wheel, not the worst option to start with. I screwed the wheel to the adapter and attached it to the base. Next, I started taking measurements for the holes for mounting the base. The bolts that came with the base are intended for the factory table clamp mounting. That's why these bolts are very short. So I bought another bolts with the same diameter based on the thickness of the crossbar. By the way, the depth of the holes in the base is about 8 mm. I attached the base and made the monitor stand that same day. This is how my cockpit looked like, almost in its final form. I understood in the very beginning that the metal base didn't go well with the wooden structure. At the same time, I didn't want to paint the cockpit in the apartment. I also didn't want to take the cockpit apart piece by piece and paint it somewhere else. I made a different decision. And my solution was to cover the main parts of the cockpit with the black fabric. The black fabric is also leftovers from my previous project. By the way, big thanks to my wife for her help with filming the whole process and for the help with the fabric. So we covered the main elements of the front part of the cockpit with fabric, and the cockpit immediately began to look more stylish. On the same day, the cockpit went to its own place. I didn't mention that's how the bolts fixing the base to the crossbar look like from below. Yep, 3 washers for each bolt. And here is a shot that you can see on the thumbnail of this video. But this is not the final result. Due to the fact that I had a lot of work and didn't have enough time to edit this video, I already managed to make a platform for the shifter and handbrake. Also I made a keyboard stand, and I painted some parts of the cockpit black. After the first tests, I changed the angle of the seat and moved the seat itself closer to the base. I also raised the pedals a little and changed the incline. Now I feel like I am in a real rally car. And was it all worth it? 1000% yes. My entire cockpit, plus the price of the seat, cost much less than one steering wheel from MOZA that I plan to buy in the future. Overall, I spent about 15 hours on the job, including preparation and cleanup. Of course, it's easier to just buy a cockpit if you want to save your time. On the other hand, you can customize your DIY cockpit as much as possible. Not all even expensive cockpits have the ability to change the seat angle as much as I did. However, in addition to materials for the cockpit, you also need tools and basic skills to use them. If this is not a problem for you, then I think you have already decided everything yourself, exactly how I decided after watching similar videos. In the next video I'm gonna share my first impressions of using the cockpit and R12 base. It's gonna be interesting. I hope this video was useful, subscribe to the channel and have a good stage.